the world has been dominated by the principle of survival of the fittest. Before the advent of civilization, this idea of natural selection existed within the bounds of which monkeys could climb to the banana faster. However, as humans evolved and began to form societies, no longer were the days of racing to bananas. Now, humans were lobbing stones, then spears, then arrows at each other for the purpose of taking land, conquering resources, or spreading religion. And this need to constantly be better than one's enemies led to the exponential development in technology for war and for peacetime. In this video, I will be going through the AP Modern World textbook, unit by unit, and discussing why the military innovations of the most dominant society of each unit are important and how they influence the world today with continuity and change. For Unit 1, the obvious choice for the most powerful society would be the Mongol Empire. Built largely by Genghis Khan, it was once the largest contiguous land empire in the world and would be known far and wide as one of, if not the greatest and most powerful empire to ever exist. However, this success was not an accident. The technologies and tactics invented and used by the Mongols were the sole reason for their massive success in Eurasia, and without them, the empire would have certainly not been as renowned as it is today. In the Mongol Empire, the tactics they revolutionized to become the dominant empire in Asia for hundreds of years were as follows: the decimal system, feigned retreat, and composite bows and short horses. In the decimal system, which involves splitting up civilians and military groups in groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000, Genghis Khan was able to mold his massive armada of men into an ultra efficient war machine, overpowering and outmaneuvering his enemies. He was also able to keep a census of his troops and civilians, allowing for a more organized civilization. Another revolutionary system designed and perfected by the Mongols is the feigned retreat tactic. The Mongols would attack, then appear as if they were retreating, then surprise attack their enemies and finish them off later on. This tactic proved extremely useful when fighting larger numbered enemies across Eurasia. Probably the most important innovation made by the Mongols was their use of short horses and composite bows for lightning fast offense strikes against their enemies. The Mongols trained relentlessly with bows and arrows on horseback, and this allowed them to travel for days on end and hit their enemies from afar. Ultimately, these innovations allowed the Mongols to expand rapidly, spreading their influence across Eurasia and establishing what is known as Pax Mongolica. On top of this, the innovations created by the Mongols were used by civilizations and empires that followed them, like the Safavids and other Middle Eastern and Asian empires. Unit 2, the Song Dynasty. The Song Dynasty has some significant innovations crucial to the continued development of weapons and tactics as the connectivity of the world increased through time. Some of these innovations include developing an early form of gunpowder, an advanced navy, and a somewhat new unit, crossbow soldiers. Gunpowder, which was originally used for things like fireworks, eventually became probably the most influential and important piece of military technology of all time, giving birth to guns, bombs, cannons, and almost every single other ballistic weapon. On top of the wartime purposes, it also was used in things like dynamite, which was used to rapidly clear mountains and plots of land for things like the U.S. railroads, which in and of itself was revolutionary. This is an example of the continuity of gunpowder or an innovation and the change in which it was used over time. Another innovation was that of the Navy, which the Song dynasty was pretty much the first to create a ultra-powerful navy, and it sent ships all along the Indian Ocean coastlines. Finally, the Song Empire designed some of the first crossbow units used in the world and in Asia, which made volleys of arrows easier to shoot, allowing for less skilled archers to now be almost as accurate as regular bowmen with a somewhat increased range depending on the pound strength of the crossbow. Unit 3, the Ottoman Empire. This empire, which is correctly known as a gunpowder empire, was at one point in time a dominant power in the Mediterranean and surrounding area. As their empire grew, some innovations were needed in order to match the unequivocal power creep in the world's militaries at the time. Some of these innovations included janissaries, more advanced guns and cannons, and some religious tolerance, although not as much as the Mughal Empire. These innovations differed from previous empires because of the advancement in technology of the era and the advancement in tolerance in the era. Guns were much more efficient than in previous decades, and the use of religion for peace and for war allowed the Ottomans to take advantage of some people's strongest beliefs to destroy their enemies. The Janissaries were elite warriors who, at a young age, were taken from the Christian reaches of the largely Muslim Ottoman Empire and who were trained and taken care of at the highest level by the military. These soldiers grew up to be the strongest and most tactically advantaged of the Ottomans' ranks and were sent on important missions like in the war between the Ottomans and the Byzantines during the fall of Constantinople. The fall of Constantinople, coincidentally, was also a major use of the Ottomans' second great innovation, enormous siege cannons, the largest of which was 27 feet long and fired 1,500-pound stone balls. These siege weapons, which were much more powerful than anything any previous empire had used, were able to destroy the walls surrounding Constantinople and allowed the Ottomans to take the city. These weapons would become more and more advanced as time went on, though the Ottomans would not live long enough to see any siege weapons after World War I, as they went extinct. The final innovation is regarding the Ottomans' limited, though present, religious tolerance. Though the empire was Muslim, they did allow Christians and other religions to live within their empire, though to a limited capacity. Non Muslims were protected and given general autonomy, though they were not given full equality by the government, and minorities required to pay a special tax known as the jizya.